Howdy, friends, and welcome to the StoryField. This is a podcast where we talk about business, faith, and life in general.
Okay, so here's the deal. We want you to be encouraged. We want you living in hope. This life we live is complex. It's hard at times. At the StoryField, you will find great stories of normal people just like us who will inspire you. Our goal is that you leave encouraged, inspired, and excited to move forward in life. But before we get started, one thing though, if you're listening and you find yourself really hopeless right now, send us an email at hope@thestoryfield.com so we can pray for you. Thanks for joining us today. Let's get started. Hey, StoryField. Well, please welcome Matt Potter. Now, you want to pay attention because Matt is the co-founder and he's the head of strategic relationships of pray.com, which, Matt, for me is mind-blowing because it is the world's #1 app for daily prayer and faith content. So I want to just let that sink in for a second. And I'm sure you're kind of slapping yourself a lot, being 5 years into that, but it's the world's #1. So Matt, does that still seem like a dream a little bit?
Yeah, it definitely does. And Josh and Micah, thank you so much for having me on. It's an honor. So excited to be here and excited to talk to you about my story and pray.com.
Absolutely. Well, so pray.com is a social impact company, and the mission is to grow faith and cultivate community. So I love that. Now, after doing a little homework, Matt, I found out that it's the highest grossing religious app in history, and the first for-profit company to lead the National Day of Prayer with the President of the U.S. So we're going to hear about that. It reaches more than 10 million people around the world, which is not bad since it was formed in 2016. So we have some work to cover. So if you download the app, and we're going to get into your story, and I'm just thankful for making time, but if you download it, it'll give you a chance to really make prayer a priority with daily devotionals, sermons, podcasts, music, scripture, and other content. And we were talking about this before the show, but one of my favorite things is to hear like these the Bible read by celebrities, and people like, one of my personal favorites is James Earl Jones, Darth Vader, for y'all you Star Wars fan, which is the coolest thing to hear Genesis read by him. So Matt, you are an expert in strategizing change and building tech products and apps. So you have developed over 6,000 apps, including Homestack in 2012, I think while you were in college. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And Josh, just as a little impromptu, if anyone does want to download the app right now, the app usually is $49.99 a year. If you go to this secret link, you can get it completely free just by listening to this podcast. If you go to pray.com/Matt, M-A-T-T, you will get the app completely free. Make sure to not tell anybody about that, but
I'm not. You have to listen to this right now.
For free right now. If you're listening and it intrigued you and you were excited by it, go to pray.com/MATT and you will get the app completely free. You don't have to enter in a credit card or anything. You'll just have the app for free.
How great, man! How generous! Thank you. Yeah, listeners, send a message into pray.com and thank him if and when you hear this. So thanks for making time today. We really have a lot to cover, and I'm just grateful. So take us back to childhood. We want to start. Tell us about your childhood, where you grew up. Give us the story on this.
Yeah, back to diapers, huh?
Yep.
So it all started in a small town in Vancouver, Washington, where a 15-year-old girl went to a local community church that she'd never been to before to talk to the local community church pastor about the biggest decision she was going to make in her life, because she was 15 and pregnant and she didn't know what to do. And she went to this church because no one knew her at that church. And she went to that pastor because her parents didn't go to that church, and nobody knew that pastor because he was brand new to that town. So
oh, wow.
She's looking for some advice from the pastor, and the pastor, fresh out of seminary, really didn't know what to tell her. So he called a buddy of his who just planted a 20-person church in Los Angeles that was meeting in a high school gym. And his buddy said, I've got 2 members of my congregation who've been trying to have children for 10 years and couldn't. Why don't you ask the 15-year-old girl if she'd be willing to give her baby up for adoption? And the girl was willing. And so I got adopted through this pastor network of these 2 pastors that were friends from school. And my dad became the head elder of this small 20-person church meeting in a high school gym. So fast forward 35 years, my dad helped the 21-year-old pastor grow that church to a 15,000 person mega church. And we built a $60 million sanctuary in Los Angeles 5 years ago. So it was really incredible. My dad's an amazing entrepreneur. Right out of college, started a real estate company and just grinded it out through the up markets and down markets and dedicated himself to our church.
Unbelievable. Wow. Okay. Man, I don't even know what to ask you from that. That's incredible. So you were adopted and you were pretty much born and raised in California, Los Angeles, and then your dad was your adoptive dad, or this was your biological father?
So my adopted dad got me from the church. So he helped, back in those days, I don't know all about, I don't know about the laws around adoption, but back in the 80s, the laws were pretty strict and unclear, and it was very expensive to adopt children. And so my parents just confided in the pastor that it was really difficult for them to, my adopted parents, that it was difficult for them to find a baby. And they had been trying to have children for 10 years and couldn't. So when the pastor called him from Washington, they were just elated. And my adopted dad, because he got me from the church, helped the pastor grow that church and build that church.
That's unbelievable, Matt. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, talk about, I'm thinking of God's sovereignty through the whole thing to put you where he wanted you to the entrepreneurial father who's now, that's rubbed up on you in a big way. And then what's happening now. So did you grow up? I mean, and I'm not too familiar with California as far as the LA area. Born and raised in LA, graduated high school there, that type of thing?
Yeah, born and raised in Los Angeles, in a small town near Northridge. Okay. If you remember, in 1994, we had a really big earthquake. My house I grew up in was 1 block from the epicenter of that earthquake.
So gracious.
Crazy time. People camping out on the streets and all sorts of things going on after a big earthquake. But yeah, I grew up in a small town right next to Northridge, California.
Okay. Did the earthquake kind of level y'all's place?
It didn't level the place, but it was severely damaged, and we didn't know, and we were still sleeping in the living room, worried, what was going to happen with big aftershocks and things. And we realized later that sleeping in the living room was the worst idea we could have done, because the chimney was broke and cracked and could have fell on us at any time, but we didn't know until later. So if you ever find yourself in that situation, stay away from chimneys.
Good gracious.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I don't live in the earthquake zones. I mean, I know that's got to be, wow. Okay, so graduated high school, where to for college?
Yeah, I went to Oaks Christian High School in Westlake Village. It was an amazing place. Really helped me out. I was very rambunctious child and needed a lot of great environment to help, curtail my rambunctiousness. So, Oaks Christian was incredible. It was life-changing for me. And it's one of the most difficult academic high schools in California. So after Oaks, I went off to Boise State and went there, followed my brother there, who played football at Boise State on the blue field as a wide receiver. He did an incredible job. Loved watching him in Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. And it was super fun. And then my senior year at Boise, I started building out the framework of Homestack, which Homestack is a white label SaaS product in the real estate space. And that's just a fancy way of saying it's a app that other companies could use as their own app, and we would custom tailor it for those companies and license that product to those companies.
So, I mean, can you look back, and I want to get to that because you were in college and you had this idea and it already started. I mean, you already started building it and you had it launched in college. So is this a normal thing for kind of the tech world of California? You know, we kind of hear about that, or is this something that you saw God planning in your life early? I mean, in high school, I mean, did you have a hunger for, was this an interest? Is this kind of who you are?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. God was planting that in my life all along. There's pictures of me at like 6 years old with my dad's old briefcase, going with him to work, and learning the real estate business. And when I was in college, there were a couple companies that were just starting to bubble up in the space, and it was Zillow, Trulia, and Redfin. And when you have that domain expertise, that domain knowledge, you can kind of see into the future. And so my entire background was real estate from my dad, and knowing how the real estate business worked, and my dad telling me about it every single day. So even today, we're on vacation, we're talking about what's the market going to do, what are all these different things. So having that extreme domain expertise, and I had actually no tech background when I was growing up. I would just literally live in my garage, my parents' garage, and I'd build computers all day and all sorts of fun, crazy, things that kids do in the garage, blowing up RC cars and making potato guns and all sorts of fun stuff. Right. But when I was in college and I was seeing these other companies come up, I knew that real estate companies wouldn't necessarily have the budget to hire an entire engineering team. And I knew that they were going to want their own answer to Zillow, Trulia, Redfin. And that was the entire premise, is real estate companies will buy or license this product just like they do with websites. And no one's built it in the app space before, and it should exist and live in the app space, and the app store is going to be the next biggest thing. And so we really just bet on Steve Jobs and that the app store would be big, because it had just launched when we started the company, and no one had really thought of doing this white label application, even in any space at the time. And so it was kind of revolutionary at the time. And eventually Apple really didn't like white label app companies, but now they've kind of gone back on that, and they're excited to have them in the app stores. So we ended up, over 12 years, we bootstrapped that company. My co-founder and I slept in front of a Chick-fil-A to get a year's worth of Chick-fil-A for free. We were taking clients to Chick-fil-A, and that's how we hacked our meal budget. We were sleeping on friends' couches, doing whatever it took to get this company off the ground. And it was a fun time. It's one of those things where it's like the most fun thing you never want to do again, because you're broke. You're broke, you have no money, and it's like all day grind, basically. During the day, we were having client meetings, we were meeting with people. At night, we were building the apps. I'd hired some friends to teach me how to code iOS apps. And I don't know, probably 1% how to do it. But we were doing that at night. And so we were selling during the day, building at night, and we just kept compounding that over time and making the app better and better until we could hire people to help us. And we hired an entire team, and eventually it started taking off, and it ended up working out 12 years later. So,
oh my goodness. What was the hardest part, you think? Was it actually the building it and the engineering of it, or getting customers for it?
So
was there one you say that was considerably, this was harder?
Yeah. I mean, we all read the news and watch the news, and we all hear about the overnight successes in tech, right? And those are specifically tailored custom stories built by PR firms to make it sound like it's an overnight success. Well, you read that and you think, overnight people can become, millionaires. And it's not. It's decades long process. Software takes so long to get perfect and right, and to build. And technology just changes so fast. You might build something with an old technology, and a month later, something better comes out, and you got to rebuild everything, or refactor it and all that good stuff. So, it takes a long time, and we didn't know how long it would take, but we knew that we were going to do whatever it took to be successful and to provide our clients with an incredible product, because they felt like their customers were being taken from them on these other platforms. Now, those other platforms are great. I'm not, discounting those other platforms, but they wanted a solution where they could take care of their clients, and that's what we were really providing, was this custom tailored solution.
Hey, y'all. I just want to make an observation. When I see someone going through a legal situation, it seems like there are way too many unknowns. Well, the Allen firm provides legal guidance so that you can make a great decision, come to a resolution, and be at peace. For more information about the Allen firm, visit allenlawfirm.com.
All right, I got to go back just a little bit. And my questions are always like weird, have nothing to do. It's basically what you used to talk about. Was it weird watching football on a blue field? That's got to take some adjusting, especially when your brother's out there. You're probably hyper focused on him.
It wasn't weird, and I'll give you some low key Boise State football. So Boise State was the first game to be broadcast in 3D, and they had to actually provide Boise State with special uniforms so that it would show up on the 3D broadcast. And that was, I believe it was Boise State versus Virginia Tech. So it wasn't weird, but it was interesting how, a lot of people would get upset about Boise State having this blue field. And there was a big rivalry with Oregon, and people would say that, ducks come and fly like they're going to fly into water on the blue field and die. Well, it doesn't really happen, but if it was an Oregon duck, then it would definitely happen. So
yeah, that's funny. And they always seem to be competing for who has the coolest uniforms. Every year they've got some kind of that special game or whatever. And then my second question is like, okay, so you stood in line for Chick-fil-A to get the 1 year, and then you take your investors there. Do you like split a chicken sandwich? I mean, do you get like one free sandwich a day? I mean, how does that roll up?
You got to go with the spicy deluxe. You get one sandwich a day for 365 days. And my business partner and I, Will, we waited in line at like 2 a.m, and then slept there overnight, because you get, if a new location of Chick-fil-A pops up, you get that year's worth of Chick-fil-A for free. And what was actually really cool is I got connected to Dan Cathy, who, is the son, heir apparent, and has taken over Chick-fil-A. And I got to tell him that story. So that was, super honoring for me to be able to tell him how he helped me with our first company. He didn't even know it. So
that is so awesome.
Yeah.
And you remind me of something. I believe Dave Ramsey said, he's like, yeah, we're a 25-year overnight success, but hindsight's 2020. So looking back, does something pop up as far as like, this is some of the biggest lessons I learned in going from zero with Homestack, 10, 12 years later to where you're at now? And I want to talk about the move to Pray, but like, here's some of the biggest lessons entrepreneurs, and I think you said one of them is like, this is not an easy overnight thing, but what are some other things you learned? Do this, don't do this. Is there anything that pops up?
I heard a pastor say this, and I wrote it down one day, and really it's the Homestack story. It's, patience and process lead to prosperity and purpose. And, like you said, Josh, it's not overnight. And it takes a long time. And, entrepreneurs are one thing, impatient, right? So we patience is very hard when it comes, you see the vision, right? You're a visionary, you see the vision of what you want to build, and getting there and all the steps along the way, it's difficult. But you got to just know that if you outlast everyone else, which is what we did, and you just stay on that profitable path, you will find prosperity. You will find it. And patience is so hard for me. It's something that I have to work on every single day. So,
well, join the world. But okay, what kind of team do you have now around you? Or, because, and transition that into the next step, because I know that jump is hard. I know it's probably super exciting and probably relieving, but what was it like transition into pray.com? Tell us how that came about, but tell us about the team you left in the meantime.
Yeah. So it's really hard, right? And one of the biggest leading causes of companies, besides, not finding profitability, but the leading causes of companies failing is the founders breaking up, right? Because starting a company with someone else is literally like a marriage, right? So if you don't trust your business partner like you trust your wife, it's probably not going to work. Almost every time it's not going to work. So when God was really putting it on my heart, so I can kind of go into the pray.com story and that transition there. So 12 years into Homestack, everything is going great. Okay. Customers are super happy. Revenue is going up into the right. We're profitable. Margins are super healthy. We're bringing new people on the team. And I find myself coming to work every day just kind of feeling empty. And which is weird, right? You build this company after 12 years, it's successful. And now I just feel God putting this thing on my heart where it's like, what are you doing? What are you doing to leave a legacy? What is the next chapter? And so for me, it was difficult. The most difficult thing was telling my business partner, look, this is not something that I can run. I will help you in any way I can, but it's not something that I can continue to run as the CEO. And you're going to need to run this company. And the trust that Will had in me to be able to lead him in a great spot and to help him moving forward is a massive amount of trust. It is literally like a marriage. And it was difficult, but God showed me in this moment where he gave me the opportunity to merge my passion with my skill. And I'll tell you when that moment was. So 12 years into Homestack, I'm getting up every day just feeling empty. And, at that point, I really didn't need to work very hard if I didn't want to. And everything was going great. So when I was feeling empty, what do sub 30 tech entrepreneurs do when they feel empty? We go buy fancy Italian sports cars. So I went and did that. And, that's super fun for 2 weeks. And then you get over it and you realize you just bought this massive liability and the insurance is too much and the maintenance is too much and it's annoying, but it's fun, right? So I decided, I said, you know what? I'm going to call my best friend and my pastor's daughter, Kayla, who I grew up with. And I said, Kayla, how can I help and give back to the church? What can I do? And her response was intriguing. Our church was opening a new campus in Santa Monica at the Veterans Center in Santa Monica to help veterans. And she asked me to help her start that campus. Well, I said, I really don't know how to open up church campuses. I've literally only worked at one company in my life, my tech company that I built with my business partner. That's it. So I have no idea how this works. Let me pray about this. And I went one Sunday and I helped Kayla out on a Sunday and it was fun. But I didn't know if that was the path that God had for me. And so I called Kayla. I asked her how I could help. And the next day, because I have a coffee addiction, I'm at a coffee shop in my hometown at 3 p.m. and my friend walks in the door. And I don't know if you've ever seen a friend of yours who has just had some tragic news in their life, but you can tell when one of your friends is not having a great day just by looking at them.
Yeah, you can see it on their face.
You can see it on their face.
They wear, yeah.
My friend Steve walks in, and Steve's face, it was written all over it that something was wrong in Steve's life. And so I just said, Steve, sit down, let's talk. What's going on? All right, I'll pause right there and I'll give you Steve's background real quick. Steve grew up to a single Jewish mom on welfare in Westlake Village. He played high school football and did really well on O-line. He got accepted to the Air Force Academy and got injured in a training accident his first year at the Air Force Academy. Air Force doesn't really want to keep injured soldiers around in the academy. So they honorably discharged Steve. And because Steve's a glutton for punishment, he got himself better and walked onto USC's football team and earned a position on the team and won a Rose Bowl under Pete Carroll. And then he started a company as a homework assignment, where the homework assignment was, start a company that would be something 5 years from now, but couldn't have been 5 years ago. And so Steve said, well, I'm going to build out the online channels on YouTube for Fortune 500 companies. They're going to want videos on YouTube. And Steve's teacher's response was, what's YouTube? So,
good gracious.
Steve built this company and sold it and became the 29-year-old CEO of this $150 million a year aerial surveillance and production company. So they owned like 20 plus fixed wing aircraft, helicopters, and jets. And they would do everything from, filming, Transformers with Michael Bay to doing missions for 3-letter agencies all over the world. And then, as a way to give back, they would help pediatric patients that were in a critical condition. So if there was a child who got in a car accident and was dying, they would pick up that child from the freeway, take them to the hospital for free. So that was one of the ways that they would give back. So Steve's living the dream, catching bad guys, saving lives, and filming movies. And I knew that, and he was walking in the door, but looked horrible. So I knew something had happened. So I said, Steve, sit down. Let's talk. I'll get you a cup of coffee. I want to hear what's going on in your life. And so Steve sat down and told me that his business partner just died in a plane crash. His mentor and business partner. And Steve's the 29-year-old CEO of this company. Now, Steve's business partner was the Michael Jordan of helicopters and airplanes. It's super rare to have over 10,000 hours in each and be an expert pilot in both. Usually you pick a specialty. And so they were filming a movie in Colombia called American Made with Tom Cruise. And they were doing a bunch of stunt flying around the jungles. And in a routine trip, they were just taking the plane back to the hangar. Steve's business partner was in the back seat. He wasn't flying. One of the other pilots was flying, and they crashed. And Steve's business partner died. And so Steve sat down at that coffee shop with me and told me that story. He then began to tell me that he was not religious. He grew up, his grandma dragging him to Catholic church on Easter and Christmas. And so during the midst of his business partner passing away, Steve was doing all the hippie woo-woo California stuff that we do. I mean, you guys are in Dallas, it's a different experience, but in California, Steve was going to Green Juice, Soul Cycle, listening to Deepak Chopra and Soul Sunday. So,
and it just wasn't working.
Just wasn't working. So a friend of Steve's, who's a former Navy SEAL, sent Steve a sermon, an audio sermon from a pastor. And at first, Steve didn't listen to it right away. And the Navy SEAL, of course, followed up, said, Steve, have you listened to the sermon from my pastor? And Steve said, no, I haven't listened to it yet. And he said, look, you're listening to Oprah Super Soul Sunday. Listen to the pastor sermon.
Yeah. Praise God for good friends too.
It was almost a threat, right?
Yeah.
And so Steve listened to the audio sermon, and he had a transformational moment in his life, and came to Christ and decided that he wanted to build the digital destination for Christians online. And
Oh my gosh.
Because he was the media guy and he didn't know about Christian media or Christian content, right? And so he was almost mad about it a little bit, that he heard about this Jesus guy and he didn't know about him. Well, he knew, but didn't know about all the Christian content out there, right? And so Steve told me at this coffee shop and said that he bought the domain pray.com and wanted to build out what he described as the ESPN for Christians. We've got the digital destination for sports on the internet and in the world, but we don't have the digital destination for Christians where anybody could go and find content on any topic that they want. And so I just said, Steve, you do not know what you just told me. Like, you don't know what providence is. I just talked to my pastor's daughter last night on how I could help and give back. This is a God moment. This is God saying, Matt, you have the opportunity here to merge your passion with your skill. What are you going to do? And the door was just cracked open. And so I jumped in with both feet. And I had many meetings with my business partner at Homestack, Will. And, we went through all the different things that needed to take place for me to be able to put him in a successful posture with Homestack. And so I stepped down as CEO of my company the next day after running into Steve at the coffee shop. And I put my business partner in as CEO. And we had many meetings after that, but it was very quick. And it's not always ends up as the best result, but in this case, it did.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Matt, like, what was the timing between the the meeting and then you making the jump? But a day. So, I mean, it was just, yeah, I mean, just hearing your story so far, I'm thinking of the sovereign moments. It's almost like the storyline I hear is just the providential sovereign moments. But that's an incredible story about Steve. I'm just blown away by that. But take back for a second. What was the Lord showing you as far as like your empty feeling and like how that relates to, because you basically just said, like, I built this company, it was successful. You had financially, you're well off, you had this stuff. I mean, it's just like everything you want, but you were still feeling that emptiness. Like, what was God showing you in that?
Unstuck Coaches hates it when movement and progress in a person's life or business is stuck, or frozen, or slowed, or just stopped altogether. Well, we have found a solution. Unstuckcoaches.com. They offer a variety of coaching services to get you or your business moving again. Check out unstuckcoaches.com.
Yeah, it was wrestling, right? I was wrestling with it a lot. And a week would go by and I'd be like, oh, I'm gonna call Kayla, my pastor's daughter, and ask her, how I can help. And then I would forget, or but then that feeling just never went away. and it was, what are you doing to leave a legacy of helping others?
Yeah. I mean, I've always wondered like how God directs people, and I think he does that. I mean, just you're not gonna have the satisfaction in a weird kind of way because he loves you too much, because he's not gonna let this satisfy you when you gotta have him.
That's
And
right.
he wants to guide you like that.
That's right. Maybe just like Steve, I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know, but when you do the 100-hour weeks, you grind it out, and then all of a sudden it works, right? And it starts working. It takes a lot to go and hit the reset button again. And
Yeah. And this is supposed to satisfy me. Like that's the thing. Like this is what I've been working for, and it doesn't satisfy.
Well, the main thing is that's what the world says is satisfying, right? And really, it's helping other people and sharing the gospel, right? So we hit the reset button. We started pray.com. And I've got two other incredible co-founders, Mike Lynn and Ryan Beck, and their stories are equally amazing. Probably for a part 2 on this, if
for sure
want to get involved in that. But
yeah,
they're just amazing, and the team of people at pray.com are incredible and mission driven and amazing. We've got such an amazing team, and that's really the only way that we're able to achieve the results that we've been able to achieve. But when you do a bootstrapped company, it's going to be a lot of work, right? And you're going to have capital constraints. And then you do a venture-backed company and you think, oh, money solves all problems. And it does not solve all.
Yep.
It's still 100-hour weeks. And so that was an eye-opening moment for me where, I thought, oh, well, we'll raise money. It'll be fine. And Steve and I went up to Silicon Valley and, we raised an incredible amount of money to start pray.com. And, a lot of people believed in us and believed that Christians were underserved with world-class technology. And so, my mindset, I didn't tell anyone this, but I said, okay, great. Well, we're going to have the overnight scale, overnight success, when you have, you're being bankrolled, and that does not happen. So, not to
yeah. So who did you start raising funds to then? Like, that's what, yeah. Like, I mean, you had the funds, but I just want to back you up a minute, because like, how did you start with churches? Did you start with, how did you guys do this? Because that was actually a little bit of a new thing for you too, right? I mean, raising the venture capital.
That was new for me. It was new for Steve. And so we had an incredible partner who helped us with that, who's the former CEO of MySpace. And his name's Mike Jones. He's got an incredible accelerator in Santa Monica called Science. And so we partnered with Science and Mike Jones, and we went out and raised capital from some of the most amazing investors in Silicon Valley who believed in us in the very beginning. And it was an amazing journey. It was interesting to see how people think differently, from a different perspective and a different scale. And it was really eye-opening to me. But the main thing that I remember distinctly is, okay, it's not going to be as hard as Homestack. And no, it's harder. It is harder. And it is, it is still 100-hour weeks. And Steve and Ryan and I and others were, battling traffic every day, probably 3 hours of traffic, getting up at 4:30 and coming back at like 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. at night, from Santa Monica every day, and working. I remember I couldn't leave on a vacation without taking my laptop. I couldn't leave on a weekend without taking my laptop, just in case something happened, and it always does. So right when you leave, right? So yeah, super fun.
Yeah, well, sorry, Matt. So yeah, and this was in 2016.
2006.
You guys started.
Yep.
Okay. Who were the first? So once you get capital, did you wait till y'all were fully funded toward the goals you wanted, and then you hired your first team, your first group of people? Like, who was the first? What's the first group you hired, or moves you hired, or how many people? And like,
Yeah.
what's the next step?
Yeah, that's a great question. So yeah, we raised capital, we raised some money. We did very well at that, and people believe in us, which is awesome. And so yeah, we hired someone who had been working for us for free. Well, not for free, but for side money. And he was I think 16 and a half or 17, but like a prodigy iOS engineer. And he was still in high school. I remember we had to like let him off work so he could finish high school. And so just an incredible guy and entrepreneur. And what ended up happening is he worked for us for a few years, I think 2 or 3 years, and then decided that he wanted to start his own company as well. And he went off and raised $10 million to start a language learning company. And, before he even went to college. So, at pray.com, we have a really strict hiring process. If you make it on the team, we have a lower acceptance rate than the Navy SEALs. We've seen probably 30,000 resumes, 33,000 resumes to hire, 40 people. So it is a very intense hiring process. There's 5 interviews or so. There's a practical interview. And so if you make it through that, you're on a world-class team.
Well, there's a lot behind that. I guarantee with all you guys together. I mean, that alone should tell you hiring is that important and to pay attention to that. So I appreciate you even saying that.
Yeah.
So, one, when you go and look at the About Us section on the pray.com to kind of get more information about you guys, I think it's great. You guys look like you could be brothers anyway. There's a picture at the very top of the website, and you guys look like you're just trying to figure out who's the oldest, which I always think is pretty funny. And then when you're talking about staffing, pray.com for Christians, just the word itself has a lot of it. I mean, it's heavy. So I have a buddy runs a small little thing called Music to Pray By, and all he does is play keyboards for 30 minutes. He's been doing it for years, and there's no expectation that he's going to listen to it. There's no expectation or anything. But when we first started doing some of this stuff in like 2012, the amount of emails and comments we would get from people, especially in countries where they weren't supposed to be listening to this stuff, or they weren't supposed to be kind of, I think one time we got an email about a guy who had to go through 3 servers in order to get to us so that he wouldn't be like pinged. He wouldn't be found out where his location was, because apparently he couldn't have any kind of Christian whatever on his computer. With you running this, is it the same kind of thing? Do you have people that like back in, comment, and leave messages on your app, and they're like, man, we are so thankful that you've done this, because you are the only outlet that we have for Christianity, or to know more about Jesus, or this and that?
Yeah, those are great questions. We have people from all over the world that come into pray.com. We've had over 13 million downloads to date. We hit number 1 in the App Store for our category in 125 countries around the world. And we've had over 97 million shares of the app outside the app as of July. So I haven't checked recently, but we have people all over the world. And I remember one time being in the office, we had this map. So we put up these TVs, these like 4 TVs in our office that had all of the stats of what was going on in the app. And I remember one night late seeing, 2 blips in North Korea. And that was eye-opening for me, that people in North Korea were able to access the app. And I don't know all the security and all the things involved in how they did that. But, to me, we're making a difference in the world. And we see it in our reviews in the App Store. Most apps in the App Store, you see reviews of people, a bug that they found, or something going wrong with the app, or something they don't like about it. We get those too. We get, but the positive reviews are positive reviews in the app, which we have over, I think, 150,000 5-star reviews, look like Pray.com helps me while I'm in the chemo chair fighting stage 4 cancer. Pray.com helped me when I was thinking about committing suicide, and I have an 8-year-old daughter. And really it's it is Pray.com, but it's not. It's the gospel message, and it's told in many different ways in the app. And the app is just the vehicle, the conduit to get people the gospel in many different ways, however they want to consume that, right? And they could be dealing with something particular in their life that a pastor has a sermon on that's on Pray.com, or they listen to a Bible story like they've never heard it before from a 61-piece orchestra that we hired to create all the music, and incredible Disney voice actors and actresses telling the story of Joseph. And they had never read it, and they had never heard it like that before, but it came to life for them, and it helped them in that moment through a struggle that they were having. That's what our 5-star reviews look like.
Well, and I mean the pray and listening to pastors, or the podcast, or the music, the sleep part of it, when you can, like, I was just amazed at the little nuggets of stories you guys have put in there, like the prophet of Elisha, and the fight for the crown, and king, all of these things that, let's just say you're like a Bible hopper and you're going from this chapter and then you roll over to this chapter, you could miss these really big, important nuggets. And you guys have made it super simple, that even to where you can kind of, not that you want to fall asleep with it, but it's that before you go to bed, to kind of calm your mind and get all the stress out on that. Man, it's just fabulous.
Thanks,
that you've created a world app. A world app. That's just,
thank you very much. Well, we do. So we have our we call them biblical sagas, and that's the high intensity dramatized version of the Bible of stories. But we also have the ones that are meant to help you fall asleep, and that's our Bible bedtime stories. And so those are set to a specific tone, and we do want you to fall asleep to them. We'd rather you listen to your favorite Bible story and fall asleep than watch the news. And that just provides a lot of stress before bed, not calming your mind and helping you focus on the things that are the most important in your life.
Well, I was thinking on sleep particular, I bet that is it's seemingly, when you first look at it, it's like, whatever. But that has got to be something I bet you get a ton of feedback on. And people just don't sleep well. And I bet, when you do what you are doing, no telling how much feedback you get on how well people sleep. And it's all over the Bible. It's incredible. Do you hear a lot of feedback on that sleep particular?
Yeah. People love our Bible bedtime stories, and sleep is a big issue. And quality of sleep is also a big issue. And so, listening to the Bible bedtime stories is helping, millions of people fall asleep. It's really incredible. I do have some suggestions for sleep. If you have blinking lights in your room, or you have those red LEDs that that something's off or on, get rid of all light in your room. Then listen to Bible bedtime stories from Pray.com, and you'll have a better time sleeping. So
I'm going to do that. I'm going to send it to my family, my kids. One in particular, I'm not going to name any names. So I just have some, just kind of on the organization itself. It blows my mind, Matt, so the first step you did was you had this gentleman to start working on the actual app. Did you guys know what you wanted on it? And then, like, from there, how do you get from that to handling all this this is an enormous amount of content. I mean, somebody has to schedule that, get that. I mean, put it on. So, okay, that is a large gap between I'm developing just an app to start to where you're at now. What are some big moments that happen, or some things? Just speak on that from an operational even standpoint, to get from where that is to where you're at now.
Yeah. And really, Josh, it's not a big secret. It's having an incredible team. Our hiring process, having that hiring process, getting an incredible team of people who are professional, who can execute on a high level, who have high capacity. Steve and I set a rule. We are not going to hire anyone who isn't smarter than us. And, we are unashamed about that we want people that are smarter than us in their respective areas. So we hired an incredible VP of content, Max Bard, who Steve had worked with in the past at his former companies. And Max was able to, in short order, boot up an entire content creation team and crank out 5,500 pieces of content for the Pray.com app. We're talking writers, sound designers, editors, we had musicians, composers, all sorts of, I don't even know half of it, right? But all of this process, and we created 5,500 pieces of content in a very short amount of time for an incredible price. Now, that's on the paid side of the app. That's all of Pray.com's cinematic audio experience, high quality content. On the other side, on the free side of the app, we have over 100,000 pieces of content from some of the best content creators in the world. And those content creators as Pastor Jack Graham, Pastor Andy Foley, Pastor Ed Young, Dr. Ed Young.
Yeah. Herzig, is it? Yeah.
Skip Heitzig.
Yeah. Skip Heitzig. Yeah. Sorry, Skip.
So we have over 100,000 pieces of their content in Pray.com for users and people that are going through things in their life. And, the main thing that we look at, Josh and Micah, is sharing. Because when you share something with someone, you're putting your stamp of approval on it, right? Especially when it's something that's biblical. So we have 97 million shares. So 97 million times a mom sent something from Pray.com to her family. A man sent a piece of content to his wife, telling her that he's thinking about her. A son sent something to his dad in the hospital. The sharing and putting your stamp of approval on the content means the world to us. And that's one of the main metrics that we look at.
I mean, I'm blown away. What's next? Like, how do you, at this point, I've never been able to ask the question from kind of a person who's worked on something as really a magnitude as you guys. But what's next? Like, how do you dream even bigger, than this? Like, what's the next step?
Yeah, the internet has really changed the way boundaries work, right? So we don't look at Pray.com as like, oh, USA, and then we're going to go to Mexico, and then we're going to go to Canada. We look at it as languages, right? So we're doing great in English, right? And so really the next is Spanish. And we've localized the app, which is a whole thing in itself to be able to do. We've also translated all of the content on Pray.com side into Spanish. So we're looking at the world with different languages. And so the next step is, Spanish, and then maybe Korean or Portuguese, and really going through and peeling off a lot of different languages. And when it comes to content and creating content and then translating it, especially when it's religious content, saying ghost in Spanish, there might be 3 different ways to say it, or even to pray has a few different ways to say to pray in Spanish. And so getting that right, not just in the actual word from the dictionary, but getting it right for the biblical context is really difficult. And so we are working on that and doing that. We're also expanding our partnerships. So because Pray.com is a for-profit company, we've been able to have some incredible partnerships with different telecommunications providers. So Globe in the Philippines is one of the largest telecommunications providers in the Philippines, has partnered with us to distribute the Pray.com app to their member base. They talked about us in their quarterly updates. And that's been incredible. And so we're partnering with different organizations around the world who reach into these different countries for the languages that we're moving into. And that's really just been a God thing. The entire company, you wouldn't be able to look backwards and connect the dots unless you believed in God, because God made the entire thing happen.
Gosh. Wow. Well, let's wrap it up, Matt, unfortunately. But I want to know, like, if you had to say, here's kind of a life message based on my experience of me, here's an encouragement I have for people. What would that be for you?
Yeah.
It's a hard question to put on the spot, but I wanted to see what popped up, in the spur of the moment.
Yeah, so many people pursue happiness, right? We live in a happiness culture of what makes me happy, but they never find it, right? Because true happiness comes from joy, and joy is really the pursuit of holiness. So I would say pursue holiness and happiness will follow.
That's so good. I mean, this is somebody who, you guys have seen the success that people would not, would be shooting for and dreaming for. And I appreciate the fact that you're honest enough and you're following the Lord enough to say, like, this is the truth. This is my real experience.
Yeah, Josh, thank you so much. And Micah, thank you so much. It's been an honor and a blessing to be on this podcast. And it's been so much fun getting to know you guys and being able to tell the Pray.com story. And I just hope that it inspires people to start their own companies and to pursue their dreams and find their purpose. And if you need any help at all, I love helping entrepreneurs. I love helping, small companies get started. So if you want to reach out to me, you can always email me. It's super complicated, matt@pray.com. So
perfect. Well, I'm glad you volunteered that, because I didn't want to ask for it. And when you're like, don't email me. So I appreciate your heart.
So
thank you guys.
You're going to have to come back for 2 so we can talk the organizational leadership aspect of it. Because as you said earlier, you have raised the bar on what you bring into your company, right? Like the expectation and the already, I'm not going to teach you how to do your job kind of thing. I think that would be great to explore, because it's those of us that are Christian business owners, it's a little harder for us to kind of, we have grace and we have faith that God's going to point us to the right people and all those kinds of things. And it still doesn't work out. Like, just kind of going over that whole aspect of the backside of your business.
Yeah, that would be fun. I'd also love to tell you about Mike Lynn's story and Ryan Beck's story, our other 2 co-founders.
Absolutely.
Your
other brothers on the.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Matt. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Bless you guys. Appreciate what you're doing. So,
all right. Bless you guys.
We'll talk soon.
Excited.
Thanks.
All righty.
Thank you for joining us on this latest edition to the StoryField podcast. We hope that you have been challenged, inspired, and ready to take that next step, whatever that is. If you know someone with an amazing story that needs to be heard, send us an email at info@thestoryfield.com. Have a fantastic day, and we can't wait for you to join us on the next episode of The Story Field.